All right, welcome everybody to today's episode of McStay on What Matters. Today I am joined by Chris Ballard. We are going to be discussing the concept of presence and how you show up being how you lead as a leader. Chris has a tremendous amount of experience in a wide range of fields, which I'll let him get into in a few minutes here. But I want to start the show off talking about presence as a topic. So presence is often talked about as kind of a soft skill or very subtly, how you show up as a leader. But strategy, metrics, KPIs, those types of things are often discussed more regularly. But I really feel that how you show up sets the tone for your team. It sets the tone for what you're trying to do. And it's not about necessarily charisma. It's about steadiness. I think that when you enter a room as a leader and people can feel that you're calm and together, that helps them to reflect that back, and it helps the conversations to start off well. So, Chris, we're going to talk about presence, but before that, maybe introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
Sure. And thanks, Sean, for having me on your podcast. Really appreciate it. I'm quite flattered. So Chris Ballard is my name, as you well know. And Sean, you and I met through my work when I was CEO of Passive House Canada. Before Passive House Canada, I have a somewhat lengthy career as a provincial politician and municipal politician here in Ontario. I was Ontario's Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Minister of Housing. And before that, I was a town councillor in the town of Aurora, where I reside. And for roughly 25 years before that, I ran a national public affairs firm. And before that, I was a print journalist. So I've had the great opportunity to watch leaders up close and then to assume some leadership roles myself. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, myself as well. I mean, obviously, like you said, we've known each other for a few years here now, but I have a lot of respect for your background, and obviously politics, provincial politics, municipal politics. There's a lot of hopefully good leadership. There's probably some examples of bad leadership that you've been exposed to. So I think we can have a really good discussion. Looking back at when you were starting out, when you were younger, what was the plan for you? Were you thinking of getting into the types of careers that you've had, or where was your original thought when you were maybe in school?
No. If I were to follow my my life plan that I wrote out when I was in grade 9 with the guidance counselor, I would be a retired professor of marine biology right now. And that did not go according to plan because I never made it to marine biology school, and instead followed my passion for news and writing and reporting, and became a print journalist instead. I spent a number of years in community journalism, and then I wrote for national and daily publications before leaving to go into public affairs.
Okay.
So it's funny how that all works out. Your dreams of when you're a young kid, and reality hits home later on that's not what you want to do. So one needs to always be fleet of foot, as they say, in terms of picking your career.
Yeah, well, and sometimes you never know where things are going to go. I mean, when I was around that age, I was going to be a fighter pilot. That was my.
Well, we all were, right?
Yeah,
Fighter
exactly.
pilot,
So, fighter pilot
firefighter.
Yeah, those were the plans, and then life is different. So as you were,
for me it was grade 13 calculus was that changed my mind. What do you mean I have to do more of this if I take science in university?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So when you were, before you became a leader, did you have anybody that stands out in your memory as like an example of really good leadership, like somebody that you think back and like was maybe instrumental in you thinking, maybe this is something I want to try?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate. I had two grandfathers who provided real leadership in their day. One of my grandfathers was brought and helped to nurture a new political party in Ontario that went on to win a provincial election back in the 1930s. I had another grandfather who was a manager of a heavy manufacturing company in Ontario, who saw the organization through some of the worst days of the Great Depression, and somehow managed to keep folks motivated and focused and moving ahead. And I knew they were great. Both of them were great leaders, because I was just a young boy when they died. But I could tell by the number of people who showed up at their funeral, some who hadn't talked to my grandfathers in many, many years, but spoke about their leadership and the type of people they were. So that sort of puts in your mind at a young age how important leadership is. And then I was fortunate as well to have both my parents were very active in our rural community as in different leadership roles at the church, local sports, that sort of thing. My father was a manager of a manufacturing company in Toronto, and the same sort of thing. I could sit and watch a bit from afar and see his style of leadership, and how both he and my mother, when they were working around town, how they could bring people together and keep people motivated, and have people follow them without ego, and without any reward other than doing what they thought was right. So that sort of set me out. And then in as a journalist, I had the wonderful opportunity of following some amazing, specifically provincial government leaders, and federal government leaders as well. And I got to, in a neutral sort of setting, sit in on speeches and behind the scenes and spend time with them during elections. And was always quite amazed at their power of how they could use the power of speech. But when they were on stage, they had strong personalities. But I got to see them on the bus and on the airplanes when they were exhausted, when they were, when we were all very tired. And that's actually what impressed me the most is how people like Ed Broadbent and Stephen Lewis managed to keep people motivated and keep people behind them, keep people moving ahead. That was spectacular. And then many years later, when I was running my own public affairs company, I had the opportunity to work with business leaders who impressed the heck out of me. I was just a young man early in my career, and these were folks who'd been in business for a number of years and who really showed me about what being present meant, quite frankly, although I didn't know what the term was then. But a lot of the skills that we talk about today in leadership, all of these folks exhibited, and I guess it sort of rubbed off on me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a perfect kind of segue into talking about presence, and maybe using the example of some of the political leaders you were following when you were a journalist. Obviously, they have one kind of persona, one type of presence when they're on stage, and then it's a very different one kind of behind the scenes, on the bus, that type of thing. How did you find that they managed kind of the change between those, and what was the reaction of the people around them?
Well, yeah, you sort of get to know them almost in two different capacities. One is this on the national stage, and then the other one is when they're on the bus playing a game of euchre or poker with members of the media, and they still have to be a bit guarded because we were members of the media, but you could tell, they were exhausted. And they were looking forward to the campaign being over. Sometimes the campaigns were going well, sometimes the campaigns weren't going well, but their ability to communicate, to be there, and it was more than charisma. They had sort of an empathetic communication style. They were very present. when they were there with you, whether it be one-on-one. And I'd watch them work with their teams from afar, as they were putting their heads together to think things through or talk things through. And they were just excellent communicators. And when they were there, they were there. And I picked up on the fact that when they were facing a tough bit, if they were tired, if things that maybe they got some bad polling news or whatever, how they could just sort of reset, step away, reset, and come back in. And just a lot of skills. I don't know if anyone taught them or if it was just natural to them or someone coached them, but these were exceptionally smart people. And I was very fortunate to watch them in action.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know I've found for myself over the years as I've led people that, a great example was in 2020. Obviously, the world was a bit upside down with everything that was going on with COVID and
Right.
working at home and those types of things. And I found that I was probably one of the first times I really realized how much the people that I led reacted to how I showed up. Like if I was tense and I
Absolutely.
was worried about things, that was reflected in them. And maybe I thought I was doing a good job of hiding it. Sometimes they see better than you do. So that was a big thing for presence for me. When
Yeah,
you're
it's important not to hide it. When you're stressed out as a leader,
Yeah,
that your team sees it.
exactly. Yeah, I think the way you show up, they definitely will notice that. um, so when speaking about that presence under pressure, maybe as a topic, what changes in a room do you think when the leader is unsettled? What impact can that have?
I think people start wondering, they start guessing, they start worrying, um, and a lot of time and energy is wasted when the leader is unsettled. Um, that's not to say that the leader has to come in a calm, wearing a calm mask all the time. But I find that teams become very unproductive. People start worrying about their future, about the future of the organization, about their future, and they focus on that instead of focusing on the tasks at hand. How do we get through this immediate crisis or this long-term crisis? So it's so important for the leader to show up in a way that doesn't add stress to the situation and recognizes that people are perhaps a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And they can pick up on body language, they can pick up on tone. If you're a bit snippy because you're tired or stressed out, people pick up on that. So it's not just what we say as leaders, it's how we behave when we show up in the room.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that you bring a good point that it's about a balance and about being real. Do you think that
Yeah.
young leaders, especially, sometimes mistake emotional suppression with composure?
Uh, I think I don't know if it's necessarily uh, um, maybe inexperienced leaders will say think that if they push their emotions down and hold them in check, that it won't show through, but it does. You're far better to internally anyway acknowledge uh, what's happening and to sort of do some things that can slow yourself down and compose yourself. Um, and maybe it's just it's that experience that over time you learn how to present better, um, not how to hide, but how to compose.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. I mean, I
Yeah.
think presence under pressure is certainly one side of it, but I think overall, and maybe this is an interesting inflection point in the world that we live in now, just presence itself is not a guarantee with leaders. There's so many things pulling us in different directions, and people having their phone out on the table in discussions, those types of things. What do you think the impacts are if a leader is kind of mentally elsewhere?
Oh, well, put the phone away, please. There's nothing more important than people being present at the table. Nothing says you really don't care about the folks you're working with than a leader who's busy checking their phone or being distracted in some way. And again, people pick up on that. You're clearly saying that this meeting or these individuals aren't important to you because there's more important business on the phone. It's one thing to say, listen, I have to take a call. I've got to step out for 5 minutes, or I have to answer this email. But you've got to be there and you've got to be present. It really is that whole act of that whole aspect of being present it's a foundational leadership practice. So you've got to be able to uh, connect with other people in a genuine way. You've got to be able to connect in a way that builds trust and inspires action through that clear communications and confidence and integrity. And you don't do that if you're not there mentally. If you're busy checking your phone, or if something is more important than what a team member is saying right now. And you mentioned coming into this, in 1920 or 2020 during the early days of COVID, and you're absolutely right. I have found, I don't know what your experience is, Sean, but uh, managing and leading teams is become so much more difficult with the introduction of video conferencing. To be present is even more difficult because there's so many distractions.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, even when we're recording this, we're one window on a screen. There could be other things. I don't have it open, obviously, but it's very
Yeah.
easy when you're in a meeting to have these other things open. And I think, from my experience, something that I find really interesting is
Mm-hmm.
you'll have, whether it's virtual meetings or even in person, with the physical phone being there to distract people, you miss out on a lot of the communication that's going on if you're only listening to the words that are being said,
Right.
whether it's micro expressions, body language, these types of things, and the ability to look around the room. And that's actually kind of an interesting part of video conferencing that I find different is, video conferencing, you have the wall of screens. So everyone's face is in front of you at all times. So even if someone else is talking, you can be looking at someone else's face to see what their reaction's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of move around a little bit more than might be natural in person. So it's an interesting kind of mix. But I've
It
seen
is. It
examples
is.
of projects, completely derail because the leader wasn't fully present. They just weren't paying attention. They were distracted with other things. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think people can do to become better at that?
I think being aware, right? I think that's the most important thing. A leader, they need to be aware of themselves, and they need to be aware of how they affect other people, how they affect meetings positively and negatively. I think back to the great leaders, and it just wasn't national or provincial political figures. I've had some really great leaders in my time in business, where when I was reporting to them, and I don't know if this is a learned skill or a skill they just have done naturally, or if they learned by watching other people. But the one thing I notice is that they are very aware how their mood, their words, their empathy or lack thereof uh, affects the people around them, and how you can walk into a room and just if you're in the wrong mood, you don't even have to have a scowl on your face, but the body language can set the tone for the gathering. And I think good leaders just intuitively know the importance of being present, They intuitively know what they need to do, how they need to, before they go into the room, if it's a stressful time, if they're fatigued, how that's going to affect them in the meeting, and how they need to understand themselves and what they can do to enter the meeting in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question to follow up on that. As an
Yeah.
experienced leader yourself, what do you do if you're exhausted and you have to go into an important meeting, or if maybe you're trying to reset between a series of difficult meetings throughout the day? What are some of the things you would do to help with that?
Yeah. Well, for me, what I find is, and I'll, when I was a minister, extremely, somewhat, well, we'll say it was an extremely stressful days on certain days, but I might have a dozen meetings, one right after the other, with stakeholders and others. And you're going from meeting to meeting. Everybody needs something from you. Everyone is looking to you for leadership. Everyone is trying to read you. Um, and I would have some simple little techniques that I needed to step away. I needed to take three cleansing breaths just to sort of refocus myself and to think about this meeting and think about to recognize, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling about going into this room with people who may be friendly, they may be not friendly, but I needed to be in that room in a certain frame, in a certain and present a certain mood. And so I would just sort of acknowledge that. I would do that check before I entered the room. I would just take 15 seconds and, catch my breath, focus and think about, how am I feeling? How am I feeling about this meeting? And then, you know, try and readjust my attitude if I needed to before going into the meeting. And my staff soon learned that Minister Ballard needed that 15, 20 seconds of sort of just stepping aside before we go into the next meeting. And I've carried that forward. It's really simple. It works for me. Just acknowledging the mood I'm in. How am I feeling? How do I need to present in this meeting? And floating that to the conscious, um, and catching my breath.
Yeah, I think that self-awareness is really key, and that's
Yeah,
it's an important for all different facets of leadership, but definitely for
yeah,
presence. I mean, if you don't take those 15 seconds and realize where you are, or you try and like tough it out, I'll just keep going, and I'll be fine. I think people notice, you notice, and the quality of the interactions goes a lot down.
yeah, yeah. And as the day goes on, it gets worse and worse, and you just need to take that time to acknowledge how you're feeling, and float that to the conscious, and then you can deal with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've talked about a couple of important things for leaders. Being present, being self-aware of how you're showing up to a meeting. Um, what are some of the other things you've seen that leaders maybe get wrong when it comes to how they interact, how they show up, how they're present with people?
Well, yeah. I think sometimes, leaders are humans, right? We're all human beings, and so that means that we're subject to all the pressures, work pressures, family pressures, pressures of the news of the day, and leaders need to be able to um, to compartmentalize that, perhaps, and focus on themselves and the task at hand, and not let events of the day overwhelm them. Easier said than done, especially when it's really bad news. Some bad news is happening out there, but sometimes I have found leaders have come into meetings and they're just too emotional, uh, and we, as a team, we lose focus. We lose creativity. We lose the cohesion, especially when the stakes are high. We really need to look to our leaders to foster psychological safety, and to help us make those clear the clear decisions that need to be made that help us foster innovation. And when leadership is too emotional, um, too caught up in the tasks at hand, aren't listening because they're distracted when they show up and they're too distracted, then all of that can't happen. We don't feel psychologically safe. We worry. We begin to worry about ourselves, about the organization, and about, a lot of unsaid things get created, and we leave meetings more stressed out than when we entered the meeting. So it's really, really important that leaders are composed and provide that psychological safety net, and model that calmness and that containment. Later on, when you're by yourself in the office, if you want to scream, go for it, but not during the meeting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that concept of psychological safety is a really good one. Do you think that leaders underestimate the impact that they have on the people that they're leading?
All the time. Yeah. I think that I don't think leaders understand. It's not just what they say, and it's not just how they say it. It's how they behave, how their body behaves. And it's interesting, when you mentioned the video conferencing where you have 20 talking heads on the screen. It's exceptionally stressful for everybody, but especially leaders to lead that type of team, because we can't see. When we only see people from the chest up, we don't get to read the room. We don't get to read the body language. And it's really, I think, an extra challenge for leaders in that type of and we may have some team members who insist on turning their videos off. So this presents all sorts of challenges when we do that. But yeah, leaders, I think, time and again, they don't understand just what baggage they bring into the room. They don't have to say a word, but we pick up on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that a lot of leaders over-focus on strategy and under-focus on tone and delivery, and how they're showing up. It's one of the reasons why presence is like a pillar of leadership for me.
Yeah. And I mean, good leadership is about facilitating your team and guiding your team to provide some brilliant solutions and excellent implementation. It's not about you, the leader, having all the answers when you walk into the room. But if you enter the room in a way that everyone puckers up, then you're not going to get the best out of your team.
So if someone's looking to improve their presence, but maybe they're not fully aware of how they do show up, what are some ways that maybe you used in the past to learn a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I always try and find someone who will give me their unvarnished, the unvarnished truth, we'll say, who aren't afraid of speaking truth to power. And I can, in every organization that I've led, I always look for one person to give me some feedback about how I performed in that meeting. And how did I communicate? How did I appear? So I learned from that, because I've been in leadership positions for more years than I care to count. And there's still lots to learn, and I still need to be reminded about presence. So find someone, if you can, find someone who maybe not part of the team, maybe they report to you, maybe they don't, but someone who can give you the unvarnished truth, who isn't afraid of speaking truth to power, and who you trust to tell you how you performed in that meeting. I've always found that in any organization I've been part of, that you have a great leader in the president and CEO, but behind them is always an amazing VP who gives them the unvarnished truth, tells them what they really need to hear. And those good leaders are people who want to learn. They want to do better. So they're looking for that type of feedback. So that's one thing I always tried to do, find someone who can give me the feedback that they think I need, even if I may not think I need it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic takeaway. So, I think as we look at this topic of presence and leadership, we've talked about responsibility, we've talked about steadiness, but still, having emotions, kind of awareness of how you're presenting yourself, and then using an intentional tone. When you think about all the stuff you've learned throughout your career as a leader, as a provincial politician, as now running these different organizations and your consulting business, what would be your biggest takeaway for presence for the people listening to be able to practice tomorrow as they lead their teams?
I think, well, I'd start with, that how important it is, how important presence is, and I said it earlier to you, Sean, and I can't say it enough. It's about being able to connect with people in a genuine way. And that's not just something that you can fake. You really need to work on being able to connect with people in a genuine way, to be able to build that trust and to inspire action. You need to be able to communicate in very clear ways, in ways that inspire confidence, that demonstrate your integrity. You have to, as we were talking about, you really have to be there. You have to pay attention. So it's about being mentally there. You have to be emotionally aware and read the room. And it demonstrates, you have to demonstrate real authenticity, so that people view you, the leader, with credibility, and you are reliable, and therefore you're worth following. So it's, I would start with, if someone parachuted me into a leadership role tomorrow, I would start with the communication skills. Those are really good listening skills, and I would focus on being there and learning how to take all of the noise that surrounds you as a leader and be able to just park it before you go into your meeting. To take that 15 or 20 seconds and just acknowledge all the things that are going on, but being able to park them, so that when you walk in with very positive body language, and that you're not distracted by a bunch of mental clutter that you can't deal with right now. And for heaven's sakes, turn your phone over and put it away.
Yeah, 100%. Chris, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I think to summarize it up, presence isn't about performance or your performance. It's about responsibility. You have responsibility for the people that you're managing and that you're leading and that you're developing. And I think your examples and stories have shown that well. So, Chris, thanks so much for being on, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being on your show. Thank you for raising and highlighting, really important topic, and forcing me to rethink about presence. It's never you're never too old to learn. That's for sure. So thanks again.